You have probably seen the commercials. Memory pills, brain boosters, bottles promising sharper thinking after 60. And maybe you bought them. Maybe you took them every morning for weeks and still walked into rooms forgetting why you were there. Still struggled to find simple words. Still felt that fog sitting over your thinking when you woke up. Here is the part nobody explains. The problem is not that your brain needs more help. The problem is that your brain can no longer use what it is already getting. That is why most memory supplements fail. Not because the ingredients are fake. Because the brain they are trying to reach is essentially starving while surrounded by fuel. And in the next few minutes, I am going to show you the exact mechanism behind that process, why it accelerates after 60, and the one simple thing that can start reversing it using ingredients that probably already exist in your kitchen. My name is Dr. Gloria Reed.
Every morning, before you drink your coffee, drink 1 full glass of warm water, not room temperature, warm, with a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric stirred in and a small pinch of black pepper. That is it. 60 seconds of preparation. 0 cost if you already have these in your pantry. Here is why this matters immediately. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, has been shown to reduce a specific inflammatory marker in brain tissue called interleukin-6. But curcumin is fat-soluble and has a short half-life in the bloodstream, meaning it clears your system quickly unless something slows its breakdown. Black pepper contains a compound called piperine. Piperine inhibits the liver enzyme that degrades curcumin before it can reach the brain. That combination, even in small amounts, extends the time curcumin stays active in your system by a measurable factor. Do this for 7 days before you change anything else. Warm water, 1/4 teaspoon turmeric, pinch of black pepper, every morning before coffee. Take it standing at your kitchen counter. It takes less than 2 minutes. Keep that action in mind, because when I show you the full protocol later in this video, this is the foundation that makes everything else work. Most people believe that memory problems after 60 are caused by neurons dying off, by the brain simply losing cells it can never replace. And that is not entirely wrong. But here is the part that changes everything, and that almost nobody explains. The majority of early cognitive decline is not primarily about neuron death. It is about neurons that are alive but starving. There is a specific fuel delivery failure happening inside the brains of most people with brain fog and memory lapses, and it is not what you would expect. The condition is called brain insulin resistance, and it is the hidden engine behind most of what people experience as just getting older. Here is what it means in plain language. Your brain runs on glucose, on sugar, for roughly 70% of its energy. Insulin is the key that opens the door of each neuron to let that glucose in. But in a condition called brain insulin resistance, the neurons stop responding to insulin. The key no longer fits the lock. The glucose is circulating, there is plenty of fuel in the bloodstream, but it cannot get inside the cells that need it. The result is neurons that are energy-starved, even in a person who is eating normally and whose blood sugar tests come back fine. The prefrontal cortex is the first region to show this effect. That is the area responsible for working memory, holding information while you use it, and for word retrieval. When neurons there are running low on energy, the cognitive experience is specific. Thoughts feel slower than they used to. Words sit just out of reach. Concentration takes more effort and lasts less time than it once did. Researchers at Brown University, led by Dr. Suzanne de la Monte, published landmark findings in 2005, showing that Alzheimer's brains display the same insulin signaling defects as type 2 diabetes, but specifically inside brain tissue. She proposed the term type 3 diabetes. The study was real. The research was published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, and it quietly disappeared from mainstream conversation. Before I go further, Have you tried standard memory supplements or brain vitamins and felt like nothing really shifted? Just comment yes or no below. I want to know, because what comes next is specifically for you if your answer is yes. Think of insulin as a key and your brain neurons as houses. Each house needs fuel delivered every day to keep the lights on. Insulin is what the delivery driver uses to unlock the door. In a healthy brain, the driver pulls up, uses the key, the door opens, fuel goes in, and the lights stay bright. Brain insulin resistance is what happens when the lock on those doors starts to corrode. The driver still comes, the fuel is still there, but the key no longer turns. The driver keeps trying, the fuel sits on the porch, and inside the house, the lights begin to dim. Not because anything is broken, not because the neurons are dead, but because they are not getting what they need to function. The practical result in daily life is not dramatic at first. It shows up as a slight hesitation before you remember a name. A word you know perfectly well that takes 2 or 3 seconds longer to surface. A feeling that your thinking has a lag to it, like a computer that used to be fast and now pauses before executing a command. None of this feels like a disease. It feels like aging. But the mechanism is not aging. It is a correctable energy deficit. Here is what curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, does to this specific mechanism. A 2018 study published in the American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry, conducted by Dr. Gary Small at the UCLA Semel Institute for Neuroscience, followed 40 adults between 51 and 84 years old over 18 months. Participants taking bioavailable curcumin showed significant improvements in memory and attention compared to placebo. Brain scans using FDDNP PET imaging showed measurably lower accumulation of amyloid and tau, the 2 proteins associated with Alzheimer's, in the amygdala and hypothalamus specifically. The researchers noted improvements in verbal memory of 28%. That is not a small effect. The mechanism connecting curcumin to brain insulin resistance is direct. Curcumin activates a cellular pathway called AMPK, which works as a backup energy sensor inside neurons. When the insulin door is corroded and glucose cannot get in normally, AMPK activates alternative pathways that allow neurons to extract energy through a different route. Curcumin is one of the most reliably studied AMPK activators that exists in food form. This is why the morning drink you started 3 minutes ago is not a wellness ritual. It is hitting a specific biological target, one that most over-the-counter supplements never reach. The second mechanism works alongside the first, and understanding how they interact is the reason this approach produces results that single-ingredient supplements consistently fail to deliver. The mechanism is called neuroinflammation-driven synaptic pruning. Here is what that means. Your brain has immune cells called microglia. Their job is maintenance. They clear debris, patrol for infection, and prune synaptic connections that are no longer being used. In a healthy brain, this pruning is selective and precise. In a brain with chronic low-grade inflammation, microglia become overactive. They begin pruning connections that are still useful. The brain starts losing communication pathways not because neurons are dying, but because the maintenance crew has been activated for so long it has stopped being precise. Think of it this way. Imagine your neighborhood's maintenance crew had a small fire to deal with 5 years ago, and since then, they have been on constant high alert, patrolling every street, every hour, flagging anything that looks even slightly irregular. In that state, they start removing things that are perfectly fine, pulling down fences, clearing hedges, marking healthy structures for demolition, because their alert threshold has been lowered by chronic activation. That is neuroinflammation and microglia overactivation. The connections being removed are the ones you use for memory retrieval, for word access, for associative thinking. A 2019 study published in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience, conducted by Dr. Franca Esposito's team at the University of Naples Federico II, found that curcumin supplementation in adults over 60 produced a statistically significant reduction in two inflammatory cytokines, TNF-alpha and IL-1 beta, that are directly linked to microglial overactivation. The reduction was measurable at 12 weeks. The correlation with cognitive improvement was significant. Curcumin does not suppress the immune response. It recalibrates it, bringing microglial activity back into a range where pruning becomes selective again, instead of indiscriminate. When that happens, existing synaptic connections are preserved, and the brain's ability to retrieve stored information improves. These two mechanisms, brain insulin resistance and neuroinflammatory synaptic pruning, do not work in isolation. They feed each other. Insulin resistance elevates inflammatory signaling, which worsens insulin resistance further. Addressing both simultaneously produces results that addressing only one never does. That is the core of what this protocol is designed to do. Before I walk you through exactly how to do this, I want to be direct with you. What I am describing is not a replacement for medical care. If you are on medication, speak to your doctor before adding anything new. What this is an evidence-supported, low-risk addition that works alongside what you are already doing. Most people who try turmeric for brain health do one thing that completely cancels the benefit. And I see this consistently. It is not a minor mistake. It is the reason the majority of people who have tried turmeric supplementation report no result. They take it in capsule form, on an empty stomach, without fat. Here is what happens biologically when you do that. Curcumin is fat-soluble. It dissolves in fat, not water. Without dietary fat present in the gut at the same time, curcumin does not cross the intestinal wall efficiently. Most of it passes through unabsorbed. What little does absorb reaches the liver, where an enzyme called glucuronidase immediately begins breaking it down. Without piperine from black pepper blocking that enzyme, the curcumin half-life in your bloodstream is under 2 hours, far too short to reach the brain in meaningful concentration. Capsules compound this problem because they often use curcumin extracts that have been processed and standardized, but not formulated for the fat-soluble absorption pathway. You are paying for a concentrated dose of something your body largely cannot use in the form it has been given. Here is the correct way. The protocol is called the turmeric brain drink. It takes 5 minutes to prepare. You do it every morning, 7 days a week, before coffee, ideally before eating anything else, or at the beginning of your first meal if you prefer not to drink on an empty stomach. Both approaches work. The key is consistency. What you need: turmeric, not a capsule, not an extract. Ground, culinary turmeric from the spice aisle. Look for a brand that states the curcumin content as at least 3% on the label. Standard grocery store turmeric is fine and typically meets this. Black pepper. Freshly cracked if possible. Pre-ground is acceptable. A fat source. One of the following: a teaspoon of coconut oil, a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil, or a small amount of whole milk. A liquid base. Warm water works well. Warm oat milk or warm cow's milk works better because the fat is already incorporated. How to prepare it. Heat 8 to 10 ounces of your liquid to warm, not boiling, not hot enough to burn. Add 1 full teaspoon of ground turmeric. Add a 1/4 teaspoon of freshly cracked black pepper, not less, because the piperine dose matters. Add 1 teaspoon of coconut oil or olive oil if you are using plain warm water. Stir thoroughly for 30 seconds. Curcumin does not dissolve easily and needs active stirring. Drink it within 5 minutes of preparation. Do not let it sit. The active compounds begin oxidizing once mixed and exposed to air. What not to combine it with. Do not drink this within 2 hours of taking blood-thinning medications, including aspirin, warfarin, or clopidogrel. Curcumin has mild antiplatelet effects, and the combination without medical supervision is not advisable. Do not combine with iron supplements within 2 hours in either direction. Curcumin binds to iron and reduces iron absorption when taken simultaneously. Do not add honey or sweetener to the drink. Sugar in the bloodstream during curcumin absorption competes with the AMPK activation pathway you are specifically trying to activate. What to expect? Day 7. The change is subtle but real. Most people notice that mornings feel slightly less heavy. The first hour of the day, which used to feel foggy, begins to have a little more clarity. This is the inflammatory baseline beginning to shift. Do not expect dramatic change at this stage. Expect a small but consistent difference. Day 14. The change becomes more noticeable. Word retrieval begins to improve in a specific way. Not that you suddenly have perfect recall, but that the lag shortens. The pause before a word surfaces becomes a little less long. Conversations feel slightly more fluid. This is the AMPK pathway beginning to compensate for insulin resistance in the prefrontal cortex. Day 30. The change is one that other people begin to notice. The cognitive fog that was the background of your day starts to thin. Concentration extends a little longer before fatigue sets in. Some people at this stage report that reading, which had become effortful, feels easier, that they can hold more of a paragraph in mind before needing to reread. This is synaptic preservation from reduced neuroinflammation becoming functionally apparent. The commitment is 30 days. 1 drink, 5 minutes, every morning. That is the investment. That is also, based on the research, the minimum time frame to see the effect the 2 mechanisms we discussed actually require. 3 additional factors will amplify what this protocol does. Each one is simple. Each one is specific. The first is lateral sleep position. Your brain has a cleaning system called the glymphatic network that activates during deep sleep and flushes out metabolic waste, including the proteins associated with cognitive decline. Research published in the Journal of Neuroscience by Dr. Maiken Nedergaard at the University of Rochester found that sleeping on your side, specifically your left side, increases glymphatic clearance by approximately 25% compared to sleeping on your back. Sleep on your left side. This single positional change optimizes the overnight cleanup process that your morning drink is working alongside. The second is a 10-minute walk after lunch. A post-meal walk, even 10 minutes, outside if possible, lowers the blood glucose spike that follows eating and reduces the glycemic stress on brain neurons. It also triggers a modest BDNF release, the compound that supports neuron maintenance. This is not exercise for the sake of exercise. It is specifically timed to protect the brain from the glucose surge that directly worsens brain insulin resistance. After your next lunch, go outside for 10 minutes. Walk at any pace. That is the full instruction. The third is morning. Breathing before your phone. Before you look at your phone, before you read news, before any input, do 5 minutes of structured breathing. 4 counts in through your nose, 6 counts out through your mouth. This ratio, longer exhale than inhale, activates the parasympathetic nervous system and lowers morning cortisol before it peaks. Chronically elevated cortisol directly suppresses the same AMPK pathways that curcumin activates. The breathing does not replace the drink. It protects it. Here is what we covered today. Brain insulin resistance is the energy starvation mechanism that drives most early cognitive decline after 60, and it is correctable, not inevitable. Neuroinflammation drives microglial overactivation that prunes working synaptic connections, and curcumin, prepared correctly with black pepper and dietary fat, addresses both mechanisms simultaneously. The protocol is 1 drink every morning, 5 minutes, for 30 days minimum. The 3 supporting factors, lateral sleep, post-meal walking, morning breathing, amplify the effect at no additional cost or complexity. Your brain did not develop this problem in a week. It will not fully recover in a few days. That is biology, not failure. What the research shows is that consistent, targeted action over 30 to 90 days produces changes that are real and that you will feel. If this video gave you something concrete, if you are going to make that drink tomorrow morning, leave the word memory in the comments. Not because it helps the algorithm, because I genuinely want to know how many people are starting this today. In the next video, I'm going to show you something that affects 1 in 3 adults over 60 and that almost every standard blood test misses entirely. A deficiency that is directly shrinking the memory center of your brain right now, silently, and that your doctor almost certainly has not explained to you. That video is one you do not want to miss. Your brain is not broken. It adapted. And when you give it what it needs, it adapts back. Not instantly, but reliably. I will see you in the next one.